glad you've made an early start as we take you to Shanghai now on BBC One Scotland and in stunning high definition on BBC One HD for qualifying in the Chinese Grand Prix.
Breathtaking change, almost beyond belief. A constant state of development, evolution, expansion. In the blink of an eye, they've a seat at the top table. A true global superpower. This is where the Red Bull revolution began.
The checkered flag is out and it waves for Red Bull for the first time. Victory today, and it's not just victory, it's a 1-2.
Great job, proud of you, great job.
Whether you're all about tradition or the nouveau riche, you can't deny it's impressive.
The reigning world champion, leading the World Championship, 100% record in 2011.
Getting to the top is one thing, staying there, quite another.
At this pace you could catch
Hamilton just took 0.6 of a second out of Vettel.
Not use his curves. If we could get close to him, we will have it. You were 0.6 faster than Vettel on the last lap. Let's push him to the flag and attack as much as possible.
I'm pushing, don't worry.
Who needs a lie-in on a Saturday? Good morning and welcome to China for race weekend 3 of the 2011 Formula One season. And in this country, red is the colour of hope and good fortune. Oh, how Ferrari will be hoping that that applies to them this weekend. But what an incredible race it was in Malaysia. We've hardly had time to catch our breath. Red Bull have certainly not had time to celebrate. And now we arrive here for what we're hoping is another stormer. David Coulthard's alongside me. Where is he? Where's Eddie?
I hadn't noticed he wasn't here actually. No, he'll be watching at home. So unfortunately he couldn't make this trip, so it's just you and I.
I think maybe the action in Malaysia was just a bit too much for him. Perhaps that was the problem.
Well, there's certainly a lot of action. A lot more pit stops than we were used to from Melbourne. But I think that sets the scene for what's going to be quite an unpredictable season.
And it's great for us, particularly you and your new role as the co-commentator. The more action, the better for you. But you know the teams and the drivers well. How have they reacted to last weekend?
Well, they knew it was going to be a big challenge in Malaysia. They obviously had a chance to practice through Friday and Saturday. Degradation was high on the tyres because of the warm track conditions. And then the contrast, of course, is we come here in China, and as you can probably tell with our jackets on, it's a bit chilly here.
It is chilly, and we've been told that we could expect rain as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and we'll talk about all the wet weather tyres and things in Formula One as that progresses, because as of yet, the new wet weather Pirellis haven't been used in F1. So unpredictable weather, unpredictable racing at the moment, but strangely of all, with all that going on, totally predictable at the front at the moment.
Well, but ever closer. If you remember back to Melbourne, then we had one of the biggest qualifying gaps between Sebastian Vettel and second man on the grid, but we had only 1/10 separating the pole and second man in Malaysia. So, you know, this is not going to be a one-horse race this year, that's for sure. Getting closer. Good news for all of us. Look forward to spending the weekend with you. But what about Sebastian Vettel this weekend? Well, if he is to win again, then he's going to have to make history, because so far we've had 7 races here in Shanghai and 7 different winners. 6 of them are still racing in Formula One, and they've already been out on the track this weekend struggling with particularly dusty, slippery tarmac. Now, this circuit is designed around the Chinese symbol of Shang, which means rising, and plenty of men will hope their performances are indeed rising when qualifying gets underway in under an hour's time. And one man who can't get much higher, however,
Sebastian Vettel, who has a 24-point lead after just 2 races. However, remember, it's 25 points for a win, and Fernando Alonso clawed back a 47-point deficit to take the championship lead last year. So Sebastian Vettel is really enjoying his time in Formula One at the moment as we walk away from Fernando Alonso's Ferrari that's just fired up ahead of qualifying. He's also enjoying dominating his teammate as well. For the past 7 Grand Prix weekends, Sebastian Vettel has out-qualified Mark Webber. But as David Coulthard can now tell you, having enjoyed the race from the commentary box last weekend, it's not so much about Saturday at the moment. Formula One is all about the action on Sunday.
And away they go. It looks to me as if Vettel's got a very good start. Mark Webber's struggling. Hamilton up in the second place. Button just behind him. Vettel having to be very defensive, and look at the 2 Renaults going right round the outside there. Heidfeld is through into second place. Mark Webber well down the field. 3 abreast now, and this is just going to work. So Hamilton makes it, and Buemi lives for another day.
On board Lewis Hamilton.
Still not past Petrov.
This would be a very tasty move if he pulls it into turn 5, which he does. Lewis Hamilton in for his 3rd stop.
It looked a long time, that left front coming off, and it was 6.9. Oh dear. Alonso is looking hard to get past Lewis Hamilton. Oh, they touch. Front wing surely damaged on the Ferrari.
He'll have to pit.
Mark Webber then, and he's going to have to try to go all the way around the outside. Sweet as you want.
Beautiful.
Heidfeld's wing is wide open. Hamilton recognises it immediately. Heidfeld's got a superb toe, and now he's got the inside line. Absolutely perfect. Oh, you can't do that.
Steering column has actually broken, Martin.
Look at that. Whoa! Sebastian Vettel, the reigning world champion, wins again here in Malaysia. Button second, a podium position for the Renault drivers. Nick Heidfeld.
So another win for Red Bull, but we've said before, this is the sport that never sleeps, and here's a prime example. This team have just won a Grand Prix, and look how hard they're having to work to make sure that their cars are ready to go out again. Now, this is Mark Webber's car we're looking at the moment. There have been issues with the KERS system on that car today. We're going to speak to Christian Horner very shortly, because particularly at this circuit, that's big news. And David, you walked over, some rather stressed faces from your friends in there, and immediately you were saying, no pressure, you'll be okay, but there's a lot of work going on there.
Yeah, that's about as many men as you can get around a racing car.
I've
at
just
this
counted
moment.
12 guys working on that car.
Yep, and they all seem to be doing it. I don't see any foremen, which is not what you're used to seeing in council work. But anyway, they're all working extremely hard, and yeah, they obviously got, 50 minutes to get this car ready for qualifying.
Can you give us a quick idea of what they're doing, the areas they're working in at the moment?
Well, it looks like every area apart from the gearbox. You know, there's people with their hands down in front, the front of the cockpit, which is where obviously the pedals will be positioned. A lot of activity going inside the cockpit, and then it looks like there's some electrical work going on just in front of the radiator there. So,
and just to apply the pressure, we thought we'd bring our countdown clock up just so the guys in there can see just how many minutes and seconds there are to go until qualifying for this weekend's Grand Prix. But let's talk about the racing then. Last weekend, 98 minutes, almost 60 pit stops, overtake after overtake. Was that the new look Formula One, or was Malaysia just a freak weekend?
No, I think we're definitely going to see longer races. You know, at some points during the actual race itself, they were 10 seconds slower than what we've seen in qualifying. Now, that's 5 seconds more than what we've seen in previous years. So all of these Grand Prix are going to be longer. So look out for places like Singapore later in the year, where we're already marginal on the race distance in dry running. So it's going to be a lot longer, a lot harder work, a lot more pit stops for everyone involved.
And interesting to see Mark Webber, whose car is being worked on behind us, and Kamui Kobayashi, both approaching the race completely differently. They were in different races, weren't they?
Yeah, it was very much the sort of tortoise and the hare approach to who's going to get to the finish line. The Saubers seem to be able to manage their tyres, take them a bit further. We saw Perez and Melbourne take it with only 1 stop. And of course in Malaysia we had the splits of 2 stops for Kobayashi and 4 stops for Mark Webber.
So Mark was going super fast, knowing that he'd have to stop a few times along the way, but it kind of paid off for him in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. It's a decision that you want to run in clean air and try and maximise your race potential, but it's also based on the tyre wear and how you manage those tyres. With the high track temperatures we saw in Malaysia, then it was a real decision for the drivers to have to make. Here, cooler conditions, then we might have a slightly different situation.
OK, so it was another win for Sebastian Vettel, a great comeback drive from not only Mark Webber but Jenson Button as well, and Nick Heidfeld picking up his 13th podium in Formula One. Those were the headlines. What was the real story behind the race? Here's Ted Kravitz.
We've just seen what happened in Malaysia. Here's why it happened, how each driver formed their race strategy, and what patterns are being set for the season. As ever, the start is crucial. Sebastian Vettel laid the foundations for his win with a great start. Nick Heidfeld also got a good start and did Vettel a favour by holding up Lewis Hamilton in the first stint.
Entering phase 2.
Understood.
Phase 2 was Vettel telling his team that his tyres were past their best and it was time for a pit stop. This year, strategy is much more in the driver's hands and is pretty much entirely dictated by tyre wear.
Sebastian, we're currently on plan B. We're on plan B.
Plan B means a 3-stop race, which in Malaysia turned out to be the fastest strategy. And as Vettel's lap time graph shows, he was brilliantly consistent in the final 2 stints. Even a KERS failure didn't slow him down. Let's take a look at the 2 McLarens. Even though he finished second, Jenson Button was slower than Lewis Hamilton in the first stint because of a wrong setup decision. But more front wing angle added in the first pit stop transformed Jenson's race. Look at this final stint. Even considering Hamilton's problems, it was this pace that secured Button's second place.
Okay, Jenson, nobody has done more than 16 laps on a set of primes yet. We are looking at doing 19.
Button did 19, no problem. In fact, he was fastest of anyone on the hard tyre, something that could come in very useful this weekend. Third place Nick Heidfeld had 2 lucky breaks. First one was that start and holding on to second for so long. This meant that even though he got jumped in the stops by Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, he was still there or thereabouts for the rest of the race. The second piece of luck, the clash between Alonso and Hamilton. But Nick is nothing but consistent. All 3 stints, especially the middle one, rock solid pace. Mark Webber's first problem was that he had a bad start due to a KERS failure and an overheating clutch. This put him in amongst slower cars. But then Mark decided it was better to stop early to get himself some clear air and run at his faster pace.
So we're sticking to plan A, Mark. Plan A still.
Another cryptic message from Red Bull. Plan A was confirming with Mark that he was now on a 4-stop strategy. But the problem with 4 stops is that you need clear air to make it work. Webber was stuck behind Heidfeld and couldn't overtake, even with the movable rear wing system, or DRS.
The Heidfeld's tyres are 4 laps older than yours. He could reach the cliff soon.
The cliff is how the teams describe the characteristic of these tyres. They'll only last a set distance according to how hard you and your car are on them. After that, they're finished, and you have to come in and change them. Fernando Alonso learnt that the Ferrari is not as bad as they feared. Alonso's graph overlaid on Vettel's shows most of the time he lost was in the first and third stints, otherwise they were pretty even. It was actually the clash with Hamilton that cost Fernando a podium.
If you go for 4 stops, it's an attacking race because the tires has to last for 11 or 12 laps. If you go for 2 stops, for sure it's more like an endurance race that you need to be careful.
Doing that endurance race was Kamui Kobayashi, who showed that the Sauber is consistently the easiest car on its tyres with just a 2-stop strategy. If Sauber carry on like this for the rest of the season, they could challenge for 5th place in the championship. And finally back to Lewis Hamilton, where everything went wrong. An average start, a slow pit stop, then the clash with Alonso, and having to do 2 stints on the slower hard tyre because he didn't have any softs left. That was a lesson learnt for Lewis. This year, every set of tyres is sacred. Damage one in qualifying, as Hamilton did, and it'll hurt you in the race. It was really a case of what might have been. Compare Hamilton to Vettel, and you'll see that when everything's going smoothly, the two are very, very close. If Hamilton has a clean race here in China tomorrow, Sebastian Vettel might not have it all his own way for very long.
And how much would Lewis Hamilton love to make that happen today and tomorrow? And do you know what? It's amazing how famous you feel when you're standing next to Martin Brundle in the pit lane. We've got a full complement of commentators down here now. There might not be lots of fans here, and we can see actually behind us that the grandstand is yet to fill up, but those that are here are so passionate about Formula One.
Yes, they know what they're looking for and what they're looking at, so it's good to see them, as you say. We could do with a few more, considering there's What, 1 billion people just down the road? Do you think there'd be more?
There are 20 million people a half an hour drive away in Shanghai, so you'd think that we could get a few of them to come down here, and hopefully we will for the race tomorrow, if Formula One continues being as exciting as it has been. What do you think the team's reaction is to this? Have McLaren been sort of dusting off their strategy book from the mid-80s to work out how to deal with the new look Formula One?
Well, I think everybody's having to understand now that you want to get in front of the driver you're fighting with now, instead of waiting another couple of laps and nailing him and guaranteeing your finish. And what I think is absolutely critical on the strategy that Ted's just run through there is that you can no longer have the comfort zone of finding a nice clear space to put your driver back in with some free air in front of him. When the tyres need changing, you've got to change them, and your drivers have to tolerate the traffic. And Christian Horner was telling us just yesterday that Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel were taken into the factory and they went through certain race simulations just to demonstrate to them how complex it is. And don't get angry if we have to put you back out in traffic, because we don't want to get to that point of the tyre wear where you're starting to lose 2 or 3 seconds per lap.
And that's perfectly leading us on to talking about Lewis Hamilton, because he's openly admitted that he did get frustrated in the cockpit in the last race. And he is a prime example of what happens if you use up an extra set of tyres in qualifying and then work those tyres too hard at the start of the race as well. It leaves you so vulnerable in the last 5 or 6 laps.
Well, indeed, you know, you're limited on the amount of tyres that you have going into qualifying. Get 6 sets to get you through all the way, and then to have your choice in the race. And Lewis damaged a set of his options, the softer tyre, the faster tyre in Malaysia, and that left him vulnerable in the race, and meant he had to do an extra stop. So
should we be rejoicing at the moment, Martin? Because it seems that Formula One fans want overtaking, and then after watching the race last weekend, the message that we got loud and clear on Twitter and on the F1 forum was, we want overtaking, but we want the overtaking that we want. And perhaps Malaysia didn't give us that.
Well, it did for me. I have to say I really enjoyed the race, and I think the combination of high tyre degradation, the DRS adjustable rear wing and KERS, and they've got to fine-tune it. There shouldn't be really easy overtakes, but what we want to do, we want to put the drivers into an overtaking position and then let them do their best and see if they can get the job finished. And I think we're pretty close to that, frankly. So, you know, I'm comfortable with it. It's way better than just running. You know, you get it on the grid, run as far and long as you can, go 2 laps longer than your main rival, switch the engine down and cruise to the end of the race. It's way better now.
One team boss said to me, though, not every football match has to finish 10-9 for it to be an exciting game of football.
Well, absolutely, and you know, we saw many more pit stops in Malaysia than we did in Melbourne. So, you know, Melbourne should have been a race that suited those that don't want to see a lot of action decided in the pit lane, and Malaysia would cover those that want to see it. I think actually pit stops are an absolutely essential and key part of a Grand Prix to show the team element. You know, if you do a sub 4 second pit stop, or if we saw Lewis Hamilton who had a 6 second pit stop, you know, that fundamentally changes the outcome of your race, and that's all down to the teamwork.
Okay, well, something else that fundamentally changed the outcome of Lewis's race was the penalty that he was given by the stewards after the race. A 20-second penalty for Lewis Hamilton for changing direction on the circuit, in the stewards' opinion, too much, and also a 20-second penalty for Fernando Alonso for causing an avoidable accident. Let's talk about Lewis's moment on track first. David, Martin, was this penalty worthy?
Well, the stewards have made the decision, and like a referee in football, you can argue about it as much as you like afterwards, and it's not going to change anything. The fact is, he was given a reprimand the year earlier for weaving with Petrov on that very straight, a lot more aggressively, it's fair to say, than what we've just seen there. But the rule's quite clear. You're allowed to make 1 defensive change of position, and after that, you have to hold that position all the way down to the corner. So, you know, the stewards have looked at it more closely than we were able to during the Grand Prix itself.
I think Lewis's view is that he was trying to stop Fernando getting in the slipstream, and he was trying to break the toe, as we say. It wasn't a defensive move to stop him from overtaking, but of course it did. It stopped him getting into the overtaking position. I don't know if Lewis had been informed or not, but Alonso's rear wing wasn't working. Had it been, I think he'd have been alongside quite a bit earlier. And I've looked at it and I've looked at it again, and in the end I have to agree with the stewards. It's a really close call. But he was reprimanded last year, as David said, for a much more dramatic move. And what they're trying to stop, Jake, is as we had with Mark Webber last year in Valencia, flying through the air. Remember, this year they've got KERS and they've got the DRS rear wing. That's another 150 or 160 horsepower. You can surprise the driver in front, and the stewards are saying in the end, look, You can't break the toe and you can't move too many times down the straight. It's once and once only. We do not want front tyres connecting with rear tyres and cars flying through the air.
Sure, we'll have a look at Mark Webber in a moment, but actually one of the reasons why we believe Lewis took that penalty was because his reputation had preceded him. Perhaps it was a yellow card the year before and a red card this year.
Well, here we have an example of that. This is coming out of the same corner with Petrov, and we're going to see Lewis here. He starts to move to the left to break the toe, then a very extreme move to the right. And in this case, it was quite clear that some sort of reprimand should have been brought forward, because for the same reason, it's something that the drivers talked to Charlie Whiting, the race director, about trying to control behaviour on the track, and that was a warning, and then 2011 was the full penalty, and of course that's cost him some points.
But there's a strange precedent being set here, Martin, because new rules have been brought into Formula One this year with the new rear wing, the drag reduction system and the curves button. So Formula One are encouraging one car to have much more speed than another car down a straight, and then you're saying, OK, but you shouldn't defend your position too rigorously. Of course, if we look at the Mark Webber moment again, we don't want to see this in Formula One, but it's almost being created, and the drivers are going to defend their position, aren't they?
Yes, of course they're going to defend their position. They're allowed to place their car, and then they're allowed to move one more time. And that's the rule, and they're having to enforce that this year. I mean, that wasn't because of rear wings and curves, because they weren't in place last year. That was just a clear demonstration of Mark Webber there in Valencia, of what happens when you do connect. And we saw just how quickly, of course, Fernando Alonso ran into the back of Lewis Hamilton in that race. The closing speed when they had the KERS system in place. I don't know if they were using different strategy on the KERS there, but look at this. I mean, Lewis does move just slightly to the right there, but Fernando Alonso misjudged that quite badly. But the closing speed was quite remarkable, David, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's what it's obviously caught Fernando out. There's no way as a strategic decision he would want to run into the back of Lewis. I think the important thing to stress here to the viewers is the drivers met with Charlie Whiting in Barcelona before coming to the first race of the season and said, we want you to be strict, we want you to enforce driving behaviour. So this isn't the stewards being unkind to Lewis. It could have been any other driver out there. This is something that the drivers have got together through the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, and said, be hard on us.
And at the drivers' briefing here yesterday, they asked, what do you think of the penalties that were applied back last weekend in Malaysia? And apparently all of the drivers were saying, we think it was right. We're pleased that you are being strict.
23 of the drivers or 24 of the drivers?
Let's say most of the drivers.
Let's say most of the drivers.
The drivers
yes.
are pretty much happy that the penalties were applied.
Of course they are, when the penalties are being applied to their competitors. Martin, thanks very much, and good luck getting to the commentary box. In case you're wondering, it's right at the very top of the biggest grandstand in Formula One, so on your marks, get set, go.
See you later.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming down to join us. David and I are going to have a walk down one of the longest pit straights in Formula One at the moment. Plenty of things to talk about, particularly as far as the front runners are concerned. But first, here's the very latest in Formula One from Lee Mackenzie.
As we've heard, the checkered flag may have fallen in Malaysia, but it didn't stop the positions from changing after the race, with both Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso picking up 20-second penalties. The McLaren driver feels he was not doing anything wrong, though.
They say the rule is basically you're not allowed to make more than one manoeuvre to defend, but where they were saying that I was defending too much was on the straight, where he actually was 10 or 15 meters behind me, so I wasn't defending a move that he had done. But it's how you interpret the rules, and can't do anything about it.
After only 2 races, Sebastian Vettel's lead in the championship is already greater than any driver had last season. The only time Vettel led the championship was when he won it in Abu Dhabi. Now, though, he's very much aware that it's 2 down, 17 to go.
We cannot take anything for granted. The fact that we won the last 2 races doesn't really help us here, doesn't make us quicker, doesn't give us an extra 10th per lap that comes for free. We have to keep on working and make sure we get the car together nicely tomorrow in order to have a good quali and race on Sunday.
Red Bull say they will run KERS this weekend as it's crucial for the race start, although there have been some issues with it so far in practice. Last weekend, Mark Webber's KERS system went into safe mode, but what exactly does that mean? Here comes the technical bit.
Well, basically just doesn't work. So I actually haven't had it completely explained to me yet, because doesn't really make a huge difference to me. I just want it working, really.
McLaren arrived in China with an updated floor, a refined version of the one they chose not to use in Malaysia. But after practice, neither Hamilton nor Jenson Button seemed convinced it would be enough to compete.
Do you feel that you're any closer to Red Bull from where you were this time last weekend?
No, not at all. I don't think we are at the moment, and yeah, I think if we sort our balance out, we'll be closer. But I don't think I'll be surprised if we can really fight them for pole position in qualifying. Anyway, they look very fast.
After a storming drive in Australia from rookie Sergio Perez, his efforts in Sepang were cut short, quite literally. A piece of ballast from a Toro Rosso sliced through his chassis and stopped his Sauber in its tracks.
It just got completely the chassis, hit the CU of the computer and it stopped there just before my seat. But it got completely the chassis, the carbon fiber. I mean, if this hits my helmet, maybe I'm not here anymore. We wouldn't be talking, but I think it's something to concern for safety.
On Sunday, Nick Heidfeld was on the podium. Yesterday, he was in the doldrums. This off in first practice was bad enough, but he then mirrored the crash again in the afternoon. Vitaly Petrov escaped unhurt after his aerobatics last weekend, but his car was not so lucky. Renault have now had to fly over a spare car in a more conventional style. The Russian will use last week's spare as his race car, but Petrov feels it could all have been avoided if it wasn't for the harsh Malaysian curbs.
I tried this curb before. How was it, go over this curb with the four wheels, and the curb was fine. And this is why I decided to, on a race, go full throttle to come back to the track, because I want to lift a little bit the front of the car and then just cross this curb. But then nobody knows it will be so big bump, and I think this is not safe.
So there you go, Vitaly Petrov's F1 career really taking off, and there is the new car that he'll be racing this weekend. His former chassis is being sent back to Renault's base, and they'll mend it and get it back into Formula One. Now, David Coulthard is holding something very important. This is one of the seats that a Formula One driver sits in during the race. This one belongs to Nick Heidfeld. And David, if we have a look at the moment again for Vitaly Petrov, you probably winced at this more than most, because you know just how little padding and protection a driver gets in one of these cars when he bashes the bottom of it, as Vitaly did.
Yeah, well, it's unusual to see a car getting airborne like that, and it was obviously enough force to remove the steering column from the top of the chassis. But you can see the point at which it gets launched, and it's the landing point there that he would have been wincing in the cockpit as well, because the driver's spine effectively is lying right on the base of the seat. Now, this is actually, as you said, Nick Heidfeld's seat. So what he has is he's a little bit shorter than Vitaly.
A little bit.
Yeah, so he's got a little booster cushion in there, which is a luxury I never managed to have. So that gives him actually a bit of foam protection right at the base of his spine. Vitaly's spine will be right at the base of that carbon seat. And if you can, I don't know if it's possible to see just how thin the seat is there. We can see a little area there. It's about 3 or 4 millimeters, and that sits completely on the base of the chassis. So that shock would have gone up through his spine. Now, Nick, again, being slightly smaller, has this system where he's able to put air pressure in each of these little valves there, and he can pump up this system to give him extra support in the cockpit. Again, luxury I never had, but in the end, that's what gives him the support. And he would have been probably a lot better positioned to have that incident than Vitaly.
Sure, because Vitaly's a much bigger driver, so he sits lower on the floor, as Jenson Button explained to us after the race last weekend. 30G, that was the G-force that went through the car as Vitaly hit the floor. Can you give us some kind of idea of physically, mentally, how that would have felt for Vitaly?
Well, 5G under braking feels like your head being hit in the back of the helmet with a sledgehammer. So 30G is off the scale, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's got some, spinal damage and vertebrae damage. You very often see the young karters coming through into car racing, and they've all got some compression on their spine and some damage there.
Yeah, didn't have the benefit of lovely leather seats in Formula One. But let's have a look at a man who knows exactly what it's like to go up in the air. David had a slightly softer landing, though, than Vitaly Petrov. You decided to land on top of Alexander Wurz, which was very thoughtful of you.
Yeah, indeed, that was obviously a much softer landing and then a little roll into the gravel. But that was that's what happens when you make a bad decision. That bad decision took me out of the race, and unfortunately, Alexander Wurz.
It was a freak moment for Vitali. He was off the circuit. It's not a worry that there was something there that pinged him up into the air too much, but you do try as drivers, as the GPDA, as Formula One, to limit cars coming off the floor. As we saw in Australia last year, Kamui Kobayashi in Formula One getting airborne, which can cause problems because of the low cockpit and the exposed driver's head, things like that.
Yeah, well, he actually went across the back of the curb, which in the past had no sort of profile to it at all. Now they do try and soften that profile to avoid the situation where a car can be launched. But, you know, this is a huge amount of area. They cannot cover every single part of the track. They tend to concentrate, as I say, on the back of curbs, on the runoff areas. But what Vitali did, with the benefit of hindsight, was just trying to, you know, be a little bit greedy, and he kept his foot in.
And we've seen a great example to show you just how tight, how compact, and how unglamorous a Formula One cockpit actually is. And this is a cutout on the Red Bull just so that Mark can turn the steering wheel, David.
Yeah, that allows space for his hands, and that's actually cut out of the headrest, and that's how tightly packaged these cars are. There is a template that has to pass into the cockpit and down through where the knees of the driver sit. But Mark Webber is one of the tallest drivers, just over 6 foot, and yeah, he struggles relative to some of the smaller jockey-sized drivers.
Is that classic Adrian Newey, trying to get every spare millimetre out of the car to make it as quick as possible?
Well, Adrian definitely does very tight packaging, but I think you'll see that in most of the cars now as well.
OK, so there you go, precisely what Vitaly Petrov went through in his car at the last Grand Prix, and we'll hope that he has a safe and enjoyable and successful qualifying session today, and we'll be in the garage as Renault gear up for their qualifying campaign, so stay with us for that. But how can you watch Formula One on the BBC this weekend? Well, the answer is in a variety of ways, so if anything as dramatic as we saw last week happens, you really won't miss it, will you? You can head onto the BBC Sport website, all kinds of things on offer there, including the driver tracker, so you can keep track on what's happening. You can also check out the BBC iPlayer. All the action available for the next 7 days, courtesy of Formula One, and of course, it's all available in high definition. So plenty coming your way. Let's make our way back down the pit lane now towards Red Bull. And just to show you the calendar of the way that Formula One is sitting at the moment, this is, of course, our third race weekend of the season here in Formula One. And you can see the importance, actually, of the next 3 weeks. Since Australia a month or so ago, you've been subjected, I know, to some rather painful early morning alarm calls, but at least you've been in your own bed. The teams have been on the road, travelling across the southern hemisphere, and now we're here in the Far East as they search for success. But after tomorrow, there's a 3-week gap until the Turkish Grand Prix. Not a break, only a gap, as everybody will be hard at work readying themselves to attack for the rest of the year. And there will indeed be plenty of attacking. So as we make our way to the very front of the pit lane to talk about the teams who will be attacking and looking for the title, let's assess how they've done so far in 2011, starting really with the only place that we can start.
Look at the lead that Vettel has. Webber's got no pace at the moment at all. Only 5th here. He's going to be pretty despondent with that. Sebastian Vettel, he's driving to the line for his 11th Grand Prix victory. Vettel's got a very good start. Look at the gap that Vettel is building there. Sweet as you want.
Beautiful.
Sebastian Vettel, the reigning world champion, wins again here in Malaysia.
So a great start to the season for Sebastian Vettel. 50 points from 2 Formula One races. Mark Webber sitting 4th at the moment with 22 points. And we said it was a long pit lane. We've yet to even make it down to Red Bull because it's so far to walk. And as we get here, David, and just stand here and take a look at this car, we're doing exactly what the rest of the Formula One pit lane has been doing for the past few weeks. And if imitation is the greatest form of flattery, Red Bull should be blushing, shouldn't they?
Well, I think they're blushing at the moment because they have some problems with this car prior to qualifying. What do we have? We've got about 25 minutes, and there's still a lot of activity going along around that car.
OK, well, let's get Christian Horner over, the team principal, and just have a quick word with him. We've managed to get a microphone in his hand. Christian, just turn around, take a look at the work going on Mark Webber's car, if you wouldn't mind, and just explain what's going on and how much of a panic this is for you guys with just less than half an hour to go until qualifying.
Yeah, no, we had a bit of a messy morning with Mark. This morning we had an electrical problem which has necessitated quite a bit of work, so the guys are working against the clock. They should be fine, but they've got quite a bit on at the moment.
OK, we can see the large keep clear sign on the top of Mark's car there. And this morning, during the final part of practice, we saw Mark's car come back into the pits. The guys are all wearing their big rubber gloves, as we can see now, to prevent any electric shocks. And when we stay on these pictures, we'll see that eventually Marc was asked to leave the car pretty quickly, and there was some smoke coming from behind Marc's right shoulder. And we can hear here, actually, the shouting going on in the garage.
Yeah, I mean, there was an electrical issue, a wiring loom issue, basically,
what story do you want
caused
to
some concerns with the KERS, and the guys just adopted a procedure that they've been drilled with to take every precaution, the gloves, you know, the sign, to ensure that anybody not working on the car isn't obviously making contact with it, mainly obviously as a precaution.
How big a safety issue is this actually? Because the rubber gloves look like just a sort of posh marigold. It doesn't look like there's a lot of protection there for them.
They offer an insulation, and they will protect a mechanic in the instance that the car is to be live. So they are a safety bit of equipment that we use if there is a concern.
Okay. Sorry, I was just going to ask. We saw in Melbourne a big gap in qualifying between yourselves and McLaren. Much smaller in Malaysia. What is your prediction going ahead to this qualifying session here?
I think it's going to be tight with them. The temperature's dropped a little bit today, but you know, Sebastian seemed very happy with the balance of his car this morning. Marc, on the one flying lap he had, you know, was a lot happier today than yesterday. So you know, hopefully we should be in good shape.
And as far as KERS is concerned, can we just go through the setup you've got at the moment? Both cars running KERS, neither car running KERS. What's the deal there?
I couldn't hear a thing you said, Jake, but I think the question was about KERS. So we're doing our best to try and make sure that it's in working order on Marc's car. It's going to be very, very tough, though. It looks like a few issues, so it's probable that we won't be running KERS on Marc's in qualifying, but we expect it to be okay for the race.
And on Sebastian's car?
No issues.
Is he running KERS?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so pleased you can hear me now, because we want to get the answers to these questions. So Sebastian will be running KERS?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, and good luck getting Marc's car sorted out. We'll be watching closely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Christian, thank you. Right, let's just pop next door, because I think as Red Bull make their way back to Europe, they'll be saying, well, that went probably as well as we expected. However, as far as their neighbours are concerned, McLaren, pretty much so far it's gone better than expected. They were really struggling, this team, in pre-season. However, they've turned things around, and as you heard there from Christian Horner, they're pushing Red Bull every step of the way.
Hamilton had a very poor start, but he's back up the inside.
Another 8 laps to go. Please look after the car. The car is damaged.
This is a great drive from Lewis Hamilton. And look at Button now trying to go around the outside. He'll have to let Massa back through. Button does his drive through. Lewis Hamilton falls way down the points. Button charging, brilliant performance.
So for a team that we said might be struggling at the start of this season, they're not, are they? Jenson Button sitting second in the championship, 4 points ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, who's sitting third. And as we made our way down here to McLaren, David noticed something immediately, the brake ducts.
Well, actually, it's the brake discs. If we, I'm not sure if we've got a camera shot of that, but if you actually look at the brake disc on that car, and I'm just looking at the thing, you can see a very sort of open slot of air cooling, and then we'll actually require a shot of Lewis's car. So that's the view from Jenson's car.
If we take a look over here, we can come over to Lewis's, can't we? And have a look at the difference.
Yeah, a very different type of. It's got little circles in the middle of the disc. If you can zoom right in on the brake disc, you can get a good close-up.
Why would that be, David?
Well, it's obviously two different forms of internal cooling. So it'll be interesting. Maybe Ted can do a little feature on that later on and get an answer, because I don't have one.
Okay, we shall investigate. Obviously, they do have different manufacturers in Formula One, so it may well be that they have different manufacturers on the two cars here. A quick mention about McLaren. I suppose when, if we were in a cul-de-sac in Carlisle, the neighbour rolled out their brand new car, McLaren would have looked over there feeling envious, but they've really taken the fight to Red Bull. They've been impressive.
Well, McLaren last year were the team that developed most during the season, closely followed by Renault, actually. So they have had great experience and be able to bounce back. I think that there was a lot of difficulties pre-season, but they're right there now. They were only 1/10 away from pole position in Malaysia, and who knows in these cooler conditions what they're able to deliver this afternoon.
And this is such a difficult sport to predict at the moment. We expected this season to start with McLaren following in the exhaust fumes of Red Bull and Ferrari. Well, sadly for the team from Italy, that's not really how it's panned out.
Felipe Massa with a clean textbook pass. Massa is defending as if his life depends on it. And Alonso behind Petrov.
He's got plenty of experience of following.
No experience of overtaking him much. So the battle for fourth then. Button, Massa and Alonso. Alonso is looking hard to get past Lewis Hamilton. Oh, touch from wing, surely damage on the Ferrari.
He'll have to pit.
So 20 points so far for Fernando Alonso. Felipe Massa, 16 points on the board for him. He's sitting 6th in the championship. Well, David, there's no doubt about it. Ferrari haven't got the speed they want in Formula One at the moment, but their interesting approach to the racing and the way they can look after their tyres actually means they're almost more competitive than perhaps they should be, if that makes sense.
Well, this has become the big issue, I think, this year. Qualifying is less important. It's still very important, but it's more about how you manage your tyres during the race. And if you're not too far out of position on the run down to the first corner, if you can do one less stop, if you can get in some clean track and run your pace, manage your tyres, then you can still get some good points. It hasn't worked out for them, obviously, in the first two races, but you would be foolish man to write off Ferrari.
Yeah, and the team bosses were called back to Italy. So we were in Malaysia just 6 days ago. We're now in China, just down the road, and those team bosses from Ferrari have been all the way back to Maranello and then back here. There's obviously issues that they're trying to sort out back at HQ. This is a big deal for them.
Well, it is, and when we spoke to Stefano Domenicali, the team principal in Malaysia, he explained it's a correlation issue. They haven't changed anything with the wind tunnel, they haven't changed anything in CFD, they've obviously had some personnel change there, but whatever they've actually developed, for whatever reason, within the facilities they have, isn't translating to pace on the track, and they're trying to understand what that is.
And at the moment, they've picked up just half the constructors' points that Red Bull have got on the board. And who are right next door to Ferrari, firing up their engines right now? Well, the driver and the boss, who delivered win after win and title after title for the Tifosi.
Michael Schumacher in the pits already.
Michael Schumacher's just retired from the race.
Retirement, Rosberg attacked by Rubens Barrichello. And Michael Schumacher, tremendous start up to 8th place. Schumacher running very wide in turn 7. Michael Schumacher's rear tyres look shot to pieces. Kobayashi just out-tractions him. Rosberg having a very quiet afternoon in 12th for Mercedes-Benz.
So Nico Rosberg remaining pointless so far in this Formula One season. Michael Schumacher picking up just 2 points last time out. He starts 12th. So Michael's sitting 12th in the title battle at the moment. Ross, you're about to head back to the UK. You're about to have, I described it as a 3-week gap, not a 3-week break before we go to the Turkish Grand Prix. Give us an idea of what will be going on back at base for you guys in that break.
Well, a few issues have become apparent with the car. Now we're in hotter conditions, so we've got to fix that. Again, it's a little bit better this weekend. We've understood more about the car this weekend, and we can take that back with us and make the next steps we need to do.
How much of that is, because you showed good form in Barcelona pre-season in the cooler conditions. It is a bit cooler here than in Malaysia. So how much of the pace that seems to be there in practice, in free practice, is because of the cooler conditions, and how much is it because your DRS is rumoured to be the best in Formula One? You get a bigger gain, and we have the longest straight here.
Yeah, the rear wing system works very well, but we've got a fairly chronic overheating problem, which means that when we get in the hot climates, we're having to run the car a very inefficient way, and that's our priority when we get back. So here, where obviously the ambient's much lower, we've clawed back some of that performance. It's not everything, we're still not quick enough, but a little bit more respectable.
Apart from the cooling problems, what are the updates that we could see on that car in an ideal world once we arrive in Turkey?
Well, there's 2 stages for us, Istanbul and Barcelona. We've got upgrades for both. I'd say loosely it's cooling and mechanical side for Istanbul, and then aerodynamic for Barcelona.
Okay, very best of luck with all that hard work. No break for you after this race. So Ross has certainly got the driver that he wanted in Formula One this year, whereas the team right next door to them might not have had the driver they wanted, but they've certainly got the car.
And is that Petrov up into 3rd place? It is. Petrov then gets his first podium. Brilliant performance. Well, he stepped up to the plate, hasn't he? They lost Robert Kubica with that awful accident. Get well soon, Robert. What a sensational start for Renault. That Renault's too good. It's going to take off. Whoa! Nick Heidfeld enters the final corner. A podium position for the Renault driver.
What a great day for Renault.
So Nick Heidfeld picking up 15 points in Formula One on his return after not even having a drive just a few months ago. And Vitaly Petrov, despite a race to forget in Malaysia, he started the season on the podium, the first ever Russian podium in Formula One. So 15 points apiece for the two drivers here at Renault. Nick Heidfeld had a difficult Friday in Malaysia and then a great race day. He'll be hoping exactly the same thing happens here this weekend because he had a really difficult day yesterday.
Yeah, very unusually, he had two spins and both of those ended up in front wing damage. We join him here down at the exit of turn 8 and 9. He actually just gets out on the curb, releases DRS, and look at that, before he knows it, the car's sideways. And oh so unlucky I should say, also unlucky to just lose his front wing. He did actually get the car back, they got it fixed. And then again, down here in entry to turn 1, and an unusual one, he makes a small correction, and then when he brings the rear back, he's run out of track and straight across the gravel and noses into the tyres. But again, very smart, he managed to get the car pushed back, the mechanics fixed it and got it back out in the session.
That's an example of how much glamour can be lacking in Formula One at times when you're pushing your own car back to the garage, having crashed it twice in a day. Ever crashed a car twice in one day? Did that ever happen to you?
I don't recall, but I'm sure someone at home might. I've just had some howlers or some mistakes that I made along the way.
Sure, but we shouldn't concentrate on the negative too much from Renault because it's been a great start to the season and it's been a great start to their starts particularly. They've picked up 14 places in the first couple of laps of races this year.
Renault are a team that have always ploughed their own furrow, and they used to, when we had a bigger weight distribution split and the cars have a very rearward weight distribution, which famously gave them great starts. They can't have that this year because there's a 1% window all the teams have to be within on weight distribution, but nonetheless two great starts from the drivers here and getting in the right place, smart driving and big gains for them.
Yeah. And as far as Nick's return to Formula One is concerned, the only man who was more experienced than him and was available for a drive was Kimi Raikkonen. Was Nick the right decision for this team?
Well, in my view, over Kimi, absolutely. And, you know, he's equalled the points with Petrov at the moment. We'll never know how much Robert might have got out of that situation, but difficult to imagine they would have hoped for more than podiums at the first two races.
We're waiting for the Renault engine to be turned off. There is a rule in Formula One that you must be out of the pit lane at 1:45. We're getting very close to that at the moment, and it sounds like that Renault engine is going to turn itself off any moment. Vitaly Petrov, a difficult race last time out, but he still showed fantastic pace and a great start.
He's matured so much since his first year in Formula One. Still obviously a little bit of inconsistency in the overall performance, but great and well-deserved podium in Melbourne.
I'm sure they have realised that engine is working by now. No, they're still not turning it off. We're going to get in serious trouble in a moment for not being out of here. But Renault generally, they've started well in Formula One, and it's all to do with the way they design and set up their car.
Yeah, they are a previous World Championship winning team. They've got some great innovation on that car. They're blowing the exhaust out the front of just below where the air intake is for the side pod, and yeah, they deserve the success that they're getting at the moment. I'm sure there's more to come.
We'll get here because otherwise someone will come along and tell us off any moment. We'll walk backwards into the garage. It's actually quite a strange sounding car, isn't it? It's quite a deep gurgle for a Formula One engine.
Well, again, that's because of the exhaust blowing out the front of the side pod. I'm not sure if we can actually get a angle of that, but just in front of where the air cooling is, that's where the exhaust is coming out, and they're taking a slightly different approach to blowing the top of the floor, but it obviously works very well.
Okay, we're now joined by Bruno Senna, who's working as the reserve driver for Lotus Renault. So the Senna name in a black and gold Lotus Renault. What a great story for Formula One.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's a great pleasure for me to be part of this team. There's obviously great history with Ayrton, with the Lotus Renault team, but for myself it's just brilliant to be in a team that's been champions before and are doing really well this season.
Okay, well, let's just make our way to the back of the garage here so that we're not in the way of the engineers who are working away and keeping busy. Just explain what it's like being the reserve driver in Formula One and not actually being the man in the car.
Well, we do a lot of the technical work with the team, try to participate as much as possible during the meetings with the drivers, so I'm always current with what's going on in the team. Also, we do the straight line testing, some young driver days, and all the PR work that's available for us. Of course, there's a good value on having the driver available to talk to the guests and everything. So it's pretty busy, more busy than people can imagine.
Good. So Bruno's still keen on a drive in Formula 1, and actually it's very hot standing next to these tyre warmers. You can really feel the heat coming off those. So Bruno, looking towards the future in Formula 1, and your past in Formula 1 included working with Jock Clear, who's now down at Mercedes, and this is his last ever weekend in Formula 1. Memories of working with him? We can see you in 1995 when you were racing in Portugal.
Well, we were both young men at that point, and obviously I progressed to the other side of my career. Jock's very much in the middle of his engineering career, and I think he's going to be taking care of a lot of the development of the Mercedes car now. But yeah, he's a great guy to work with.
And he wasn't a bad man for you to work with either, because working with Jock Clear led to David doing this.
David Coulthard is now within sight of the checkered flag, which he sees now brilliantly to win his first Grand Prix.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic to see that footage of you, David. You're now going to head up to the commentary box in your new career, so good luck with that one today. And as for Jock Clear, well, as it is his last Grand Prix, we decided that he should join Nico Rosberg on a little walk around the track.
We're going to take a look at this Shanghai Grand Prix circuit, 3.4 miles. We're joined by Nico Rosberg and Jock Clear of the Mercedes-Benz team. How are you looking at this track in terms of qualifying?
Well, this year the challenge is a bit different because qualifying has lost a bit of importance because it's just ever so important to get the race balance right, because you can just make so much, so even positions up.
Now, man, you need a very strong relationship with Jock Clear, your engineer. It's fascinating for me to hear that actually the whole focus is now on Sunday afternoon rather than Saturday.
Well, that's making it very tricky for engineers, because much as you talk to the driver about compromises and actually we're going to work on race pace because that's more important, you know yourself, you get into qualifying and the balance isn't right, and he's going to be throwing things around and let you know this is just, I can't get into the corner, I can't get out of the corners.
I don't throw things around. I very politely say, Jock, you've given me a terrible car.
I'd love to drive this corner. You arrive, doing 180 miles an hour, and then you just attack like crazy. Is it as good as it looks?
You got to be careful, because this year also the Pirelli tires, if you attack like crazy going in, you overheat the front tires and they just wash out. So you have to be very careful with what you're doing. And so probably on the contrary, you have to take quite easy going in, because it's such a long corner, as little steering as possible.
What you're saying is you're not managing your tyres lap by lap, it's corner by corner.
In the corner, you're managing your tyre, yeah.
And that's, again, where our relationship comes in. You have to go onto the driver and say, I know you want to attack the corner, I know it's qualifying, I know you want every millisecond, but you're gonna take a load of speed into there, you turn up a mid-corner with no front grip left because they've overheated, and you lose tenths of seconds just for those milliseconds on the way in. But yeah, 5G going in here, it's a big pull around here.
So turn 13, it looks a pretty challenging corner.
It looks much longer than it actually does in the racing car. But yeah, even in the car, it does go on for a long time.
Now here in qualifying, you can open your rear wing and use the DRS whenever you want. And surely it's going to be quite a challenge to get it open early enough without spinning off the racetrack.
There's a lot of lap time to be had for the driver if he gets the KERS and DRS on or working as soon as possible as you come out of the corner. So it's going to be really challenging here to get the moment right. When are you not grip limited anymore? When can you activate the DRS, put the rear wing down without spinning off? And then when can you hit the KERS button? And that's a big challenge.
The turn 14 hairpin, Nico, tell us about this.
Well, in qualifying, it's a very challenging part of the track because you arrive with very, very high speeds. And there would always be some bumps also in brakes, under braking here. And in qualifying, you just have to get the braking as late as possible because there's a lot of lap time in that. But if you lock up a front wheel, you're going to be going, definitely go wide, and you lose tenths straight away. So it's a very fine line, and it's a very, very important area to win lap time.
But your car's pretty fast in a straight line, isn't it? Don't you have one of the fastest cars?
Yeah. I mean, we've got quite a slippery car, and we've got quite a good DRS system.
What do you mean with slippery car?
Slippery aerodynamically, hopefully
okay.
Not tyre grip-wise.
Okay. I thought you were referring to
we have seen it sliding around a bit.
Grip there, okay.
Tear in your eye after final quali and the final race, Jock?
I'm sure it will be. Obviously, originally I was thinking Abu Dhabi at the end of last year, so I've been through that emotional roller coaster. Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly miss the adrenaline of qualifying and you know, just being part of that tight little relationship you have with the driver, and I'll miss that for sure.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And with just over 6 minutes to go until the start of qualifying, you can hear the engines are being turned on, and Nick Heidfeld is in his car gearing up for qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. Bruno, if you can, just explain the kind of processes that will be going on in this garage with just a few seconds to go.
Well, the last thing they do is the setup for the car. They put the car on a flat patch to make sure that all corners have the right weight. They do a brake bleed to make sure that there's no air on the brake lines, and they warm the engines up. That's the last thing they do before the drivers get in the car. So the car is ready to go as soon as the drivers need to go on the strategy. Cars are out of the box.
Okay, so there you go. Nick Heidfeld is in the car. At the moment, no sign of Vitaly Petrov here in the garage. It was interesting, actually. He came in a minute ago, and he used the tyres, which are being heated up by the tyre warmers, to warm his own hands. So obviously Vitaly is feeling the cold at the moment just a little bit. Bruno, thank you very much. Bruno's going to be spending the whole qualifying session with us. But right now, it's time to see who will fall at the first part of qualifying. It's time for Q1 with Martin Bundle alongside David Coulthard. It's qualifying for the Chinese